Aaron, just Aaron and I. Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Strategic Planning Committee meeting for the 11th of October. Madam Secretary, let the roll call show that all members of the committee are present without exception. Item number 2, the invocation and pledge. If everyone would please rise for those things, and Mr. Charlie Stevens will be leading us this evening in the prayer.
O Heavenly Father, as I come and I slip into the presence of thy Holy Spirit, I ask for your guidance. I ask for your leadership as you lead us into this meeting. I pray that we will do what is in the best interest of our parish and the people that are serving us. Lord, we need you, and I know we can call upon you because you promise us. If we knock, the door will open. If we ask, it shall be given. And if we seek, we will surely find. We ask for these blessings in your holy and righteous name. In the name of Jesus, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Correct it, Jeff. Should I correct it? Should I correct it? Right. I should correct that.
I just say she's not here.
The chair misspoke, Madam Secretary. Ms. Casso is not here this evening, and she's still a member of this committee. Okay, item number 5 on today's agenda is approval of the Strategic Planning Committee meetings from September 13th, 2019. And before I ask for a vote on that, I skipped over number 4, public comment period. Anyone wishing to speak tonight on either of our 2 agenda items, 6 or 7, please fill out a red or green card and bring it up to Jessica Marcotte, seated right over here in front. And when the item is called up, you will be given 3 minutes to speak. Back to number 5 then. I need a motion on approval of September 13 minutes.
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Dawson, a second by Councilman Joseph to approve those minutes. Any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, those minutes are approved. Item number 6 is a discussion of minority business programs. This was originally sponsored by Councilman Oliver Joseph, and then I think Councilman Turner took up the mantle. But I understand from those guys this evening that we're going to have a guest speaker, Mrs. Dangerfield. Ms. Dangerfield, if we can get you to come up to the microphone. Ms. Dangerfield is a consultant for DBE, which stands for Disadvantaged Business Enterprises. Welcome, Ms. Dangerfield.
Thank you. So I was asked to come and really put some clarity around what a policy would look like that would serve the parish. In Louisiana, the Louisiana Constitution actually prohibits a minority business program. What it allows is a program for disadvantaged businesses where these businesses are economically disadvantaged, basically a small business program. The program in Louisiana and for the parish would have to be race and gender neutral. And the determination of what makes a business disadvantaged would be their cash flow, the amount of revenue, how big the business is, and the number of employees. The Louisiana Department of Economic Development has a program called the Hudson Initiative, and that program certifies businesses as disadvantaged. It includes small businesses, and it also includes businesses that are owned by veterans and service-disabled veterans. The state of Louisiana Department of Transportation also has a program called a Small Business Enterprise Program, and they certify small businesses that are disadvantaged to participate in Department of Transportation funded projects. Generally, once a policy is enacted, it's implemented through whatever procurement process you have. There are goals that are developed based on the availability of small businesses in your area to be able to perform the work. The goals are put in your procurement documents, your solicitation documents, and in the contracts that you enter into with your contractors where they commit they will do business with the percentage of disadvantaged businesses that you identify as available in your area. The Louisiana public bid law also does not allow a local preference, so you wouldn't be able to say it could only be people in Ascension Parish. But what you would do, what most municipalities would do, is a very targeted outreach session to get the businesses in your parish to register with LED or with the SBE program for the Department of Transportation and make sure they're aware of opportunities as they come up. Most municipalities who do this, it's embedded either in procurement or sometimes in your Department of Public Works or your Department of Capital Projects. The goals are aspirational, so you can't deny someone a contract because they didn't meet the goal, but what you can require that they do is demonstrate they have done their best effort, they've done everything they can do to get to the level of participation you're looking for. I am happy to answer any questions.
Okay.
Well, we thank you, Ms. Davenport, and
Dangerfield?
I'm just going to turn this. Dangerfield?
Yeah.
I apologize for that. He said it, not me. Rodney Dangerfield.
Yeah,
I'm sure, Ms. Dangerfield, you get a lot more respect than does Rodney.
A little, just a little.
And you will get that from this committee, I will assure you that. We'll go ahead and start this evening, for want of a better place, to my immediate right, to your left, with Councilman Dawson.
Well, first, thank you for coming. This is really the first time I've seen this, you know, the acronym, if you will, a few times, and I guess I really didn't understand what the mission was for that, and so maybe I'm gonna attempt to maybe summarize what you said, which is there is no preference given to anyone in these programs. So if it's in procurement or if there are no preferences for somebody being a disadvantaged business enterprise, is that correct?
So you would establish goals, so there would be an analysis done of your community. If in your community you say, we know 10% of our businesses here could participate on our project, so you would put a goal of 10% on your project. You would require that your contractors who are bidding on the project either meet that 10% goal or demonstrate that they contacted the businesses and attempted to meet the goal. So there's no preference around race or gender. The requirement is that they either meet the goal you have set or that they show that they tried to meet the goal.
And you wouldn't give them any preference or any advantage in the bidding process, is that correct?
In a design build process, you cannot give them an advantage. You have to select the lowest bidder. If it's a request for proposals, you could, by policy, say that we will give 10 points to any proposer who meets the goal, but that would be a policy that you would enact. Or if you were using like a design build or construction management at risk, because it's not a bid, they win by proposal, you could put in your proposal documents that the proposer who demonstrates their commitment to our program will give them extra points in the selection process. But in a hard bid, it's going to be the lowest bidder.
It appeared when I read quickly some of the ones that were attached tonight, but it appeared that there's also training involved in this, and there is some requirements for early payment, or I can't remember what all they are, but notifications and specific training to assist these businesses. Is that correct?
So there is training that is available in a number of places, particularly with LED, how you structure your program. You could say that your expectation is that your contractors will provide training for the subcontractors. That is something you could build into your program. In terms of payment, you can't require a contractor to pay their subs before you've paid them. So even in that situation, a prompt payment policy, I can't pay my subcontractor if you haven't paid me. So prompt payment means I have to pay my sub promptly after I have received payment from you. So you're not putting any additional burden on your contractors. You're just requiring that they have your money and you want them to pay their subcontractors with the same due diligence that you've paid them.
Another thing I couldn't understand was, and I see the goals, and so let's just say, like you mentioned, was a 10% goal. What happens if we as a parish, if we don't meet that goal?
So you establish the goal based on the availability of firms in your area. So I do some work in Lafayette. We recently established a goal for Lafayette of 7.3%, because based on the number of businesses in their area, that's the goal they can achieve. But that's for you. So that's your aspirational goal, and that's what you're asking folk to make. I can tell you that they're exceeding that goal at this point. They're up to an 11-12% because of it's always going to be leadership that's going to make the program work. So if you want it to work, it will work well.
There are no consequences if you don't meet the goal. Is that correct?
There's no consequences if you don't meet the goal unless you want to put consequences in your policy.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Again, thank you, Ms. Dangerfield. So, at the risk of redundancy and reiterating, I'm sure the public understands this. What we have in our packets, ladies and gentlemen, is the code of ordinances that exists right now in New Orleans Parish, and what's the other one? Shreveport, which means that if this committee were to recommend, and please understand this, Ms. Dangerfield and the audience out there, we don't make law here. We recommend to the larger body. So if this came out committee tonight, it would just be a recommendation. That's number one. And it would require then, obviously, that we would establish some sort of law. And if I understand what you said, in that law, using these as models, from what I've read, we would establish what percentage goal for a DBE we would want to have, which we could get assistance on if we decide to do this, as to what would be appropriate. But that, even if it is made into law, would in no way affect this parish's ability to give any advantage to a DBE on bids. It would, however, you mentioned RFPs. For example, you gave the example that we could give points like on our engineering
Right.
and non-engineering committees that score these RFPs and RFQs and stuff, 10 points or whatever the point is that we would put in that law. So I don't see where it would change a whole lot of things from the bid process, which is probably the lion's share of what we do in this parish. It could potentially even affect RFP, but the question would be this: I'm not even sure it would do a lot of that. Do we have a lot of disadvantaged business entities in Ascension Parish that would therefore be able to compete for some of the, quite frankly, most of the contracts we do are super large. They're usually 6-digit type things. In fact, it requires, doesn't it, Bill, if it's over a certain amount of money that we have to go out for an RFP and so forth. And I may just be unaware, I'm an ignorant beast in that arena, that maybe we do have those. So that would be one question. And my other question, I think you've answered, is what would happen if these are just goals, even if we put it in law. So there would be no penalty, so that everybody understands to us. If let's say we set our goal, I'm looking in New Orleans, it says 35%. Let's say our goal was 10%. And we don't reach that on any given, whatever the time frame would be, calendar year, whatever. We are not in any trouble as long as we don't write anything in the law that makes us have trouble, right?
Exactly. So New Orleans has had that 35% goal for maybe since before Katrina.
Just curious, have they ever been able to achieve that?
So under my watch, they did 41%.
Okay.
So they are exceeding it now. It was strengthening the policy and strengthening the contract language and really putting some teeth in the policy is what makes it work. The goal for your area is generally achieved through subcontracting. So if you have a $10 million contract, you're generally not going to have a disadvantaged business that could do a $10 million contract, but you will have a business that could do $350,000 worth of painting
Right.
or $17,000 worth of striping. So
Right,
the
and there may
goal
be
is-
some isolated, because what I
Yes.
see is, for example, we every month get our finance department to give us a list of the companies that we're doing business with and so forth, and amounts of monies and so forth, for us to examine and to approve.
So
And just take it, for example, like Janney King. I'm not throwing a name out or endorsing them or anything, but they, for example, recently got the approval. So they would be, but that would be a bid. We don't do an RFP for that. So a disadvantaged business enterprise would not be allowed to compete for that business. But yet, that's an area where I see maybe a DBE could be used, as opposed, again, I just see these other companies, these big engineering firms, it's, hundreds of thousands of dollars, but I don't know.
So for your Janney King bid, if you looked in your community and you saw that you have small janitorial companies that could do the work, so you would put on that bid a goal of 10%, 5%, whatever you could do. And then Janney King would subcontract some
That's
of
the
the
way the
work
program
to a
works.
smaller firm.
Now it's making more sense.
Yes.
Thank you for that clarification. Mr. Joseph?
All right, and that's one, thank you for answering that way. The goal is, we're, this was so important to me, is that we have small business, disadvantaged business here in the Ascension Parish. And this year, we're gonna do about $110 million worth of contract work. But that one contractor come here and he win the bid, and we have nothing to say about it. This here give us an opportunity to give our own people locally to work as part of it. If it's 10%, that means out of that, $10 million, 10% of the workers contractors can come here. If he digging the ditch, the hauling the truck drivers, or the person who just trimming the trees, that's just making them, if they fit the criteria, they can be part of it. And that's what's so important to me, is that I've been here for going on 13 years, and all I see is just one contractor, and they got it, they do it, but the small business here in Ascension Parish is missing out a great opportunity, because we don't have this. Baton Rouge is looking at it right now. You say Lafayette just did it.
Lafayette Airport, yes.
Right. New Orleans Airport did it too, correct?
All $1.3 billion worth. Yes,
Right.
sir.
Shreveport, their fair share program. I mean, I've been looking at that program for over 10 years, and I know how successful it's been. So everyone in the country is doing this for their community. So, I mean, I'm hoping that we can look at this here and bring this to our community, because it's a win-win for us.
It can be a game changer if you have small businesses here that have the capacity to do the work. The policy has to be tight, and then the monitoring. You can't just do the policy but not look every month and see, we paid you, who did you pay? Who in our community did you pay? Did you pay your subcontractors? How did you pay your vendors? So the policy on the front end being real tight, but then monitoring the process to make sure people are doing what they committed to do on the front.
And that's one thing else that we look at our Ascension Parish Economic Development organization that we have. They can help set up and run the program. We do have the capability of doing it. It's just are we willing to do it? So that's all I have.
Yep. Mr. Turner?
Nothing to add, Mr. Joseph pretty much covered everything.
All right, I'm going to make a summarial comment here, unless you guys wish to have round two. Why don't we do yours first then, Bill?
Just a comment that, we do receive bids where the contractors say, my goal is to have 10% DBE. For example, the courthouse, when we did the construction management at risk, which is really, the whole contract to construct the the courthouse, and each one of those contractors, they submitted that as part of their bid, that their goal as a company was to have whatever it was, 15% or 20% DBE on their job. So, even if we don't, and I'm not, maybe I'm just throwing this out, but even if we don't have that as a policy, we still can take advantage of some of that in that these general contractors that we bring in, we can have them report to us how many DBE, what's their goal as DBE, and how many do they bring in to our parish.
Yeah, the only thing the policy gives you is the certainty that it's going to happen on every contract. So you're not subject to the goodwill of the contractor. It's certain that you will get the commitment that you're looking for to do business with small businesses.
Go ahead, Alan.
And the other thing, Bill, I understand what you're saying, but the tracking part of it is the track to see where's your money going. They can bring DBE, but they may come from New Orleans, they may come from a lot of places, and you're not giving them a list to say, here's local business right here. If they want striping, they might go to, like I say, New Orleans, but we might have 5 less striping cement pavement contractor right here in the Sampson Parish that they can say, well, okay, well, we're gonna go local with this. We're gonna go get quotes from those 3 companies and the lowest one and put it in our package. That's the key thing, is tracking it and knowing where your money is being spent and those contractors when they come in. And that's the biggest thing. It's just a tracking device and getting the company to register, and we monitor them. Because if I'm not mistaken, once they meet, if we put a certain goal, if they make over, if they're in the program for 5 years and they make over $2 million, they're out the program or something like that.
So there are some size standards that limit who can participate in the program. So once you move out of the level of economic disadvantage, you're no longer eligible for the program. So that it's a way to make sure that the program is serving the people you intended to serve.
Right.
Okay, Ms. Dangerfield, I like to play what if sometimes.
Sure.
I think that's a healthy process, wouldn't you agree? So let's take this scenario, this totally hypothetical. So we go out on bid for something, service X, material Y, both, and we receive 5 bids. 4 of those bids are non-DBE. 1 bid is DBE, but it's not the lowest bid. We could reject the DBE company and go with the lowest bid, or are we forced to apply their request to our goal?
You have to reject the DBE and go with the lowest bid if this is designed.
Because of the bid laws.
Because of the public bid
So this
law.
would in no way affect that scenario.
No, but what it would do, so when the bid is developed, so as a matter of responsibility, it says, we have a 10% goal, and we need you to demonstrate that you met the goal or that you tried to do it. So the 2 lowest bidders come in, they have to provide documentation that they met the 10% or that they tried. And that is a measure of responsibility.
In terms of met the 10% in terms of subcontractors?
Yes.
I got you, okay.
And if they did, if they met the goal or they tried, they're responsible, and you can select them to do business with. If they didn't try, if they didn't even try, then they're not responsible. Then you would go to the next.
And I didn't intend that in any way to be a trick question, because actually we have discretionary authority. We can still take and move things like on RFPs in our committee, let's say, says anoint this company and not this other one, and move one up and take one down depending on whatever arguments are advanced that evening. For example,
Right.
One that always gets to me is the committee will maybe not tie, but put 2 companies within a point of each other, and then the company, I see you nodding your head, 3, 4, and
Yes.
5 might be distanced by 20 or 30 more points in a 5-judge scenario and so forth, so.
For an RFP or for a CMAR, you can do
Right,
that. But
right.
for a bid,
Right, but for a
all you
bid.
can do is take
right,
the lowest
is
bid.
is the lowest bid. I think I have it all now.
Okay.
So what is the pleasure of the committee? This item tonight, I believe, was up for discussion since it was deferred last time and we weren't prepared to have Ms. Dangerfield with us, and we thank her again for coming. So we can bring this back to this committee or what? Mr. Joseph?
Yeah. I would like to bring this back to look at not for discussion, to move it to,
Action.
for action to, at least move it up through the chains to at least go out and see a survey, a study done based on what would be our percentage if we, would like to have a DBE program. Because
So-
right now, we don't know what would be the percentage. If it would be 5%, I mean, if it would be only 2%, then, I mean, I can understand that. But if it would be a higher percentage, something that we need to look at that can benefit our community, I mean, it would be something to look forward to moving in that direction.
So are you making that in the form of a motion?
Yes.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilman Joseph and a second by Councilman Travis Turner that we're going to bring it back, and we're going to bring it back next time actionable, is what I heard. What I'd like to ask in this motion, because there was information asked for, who's going to supply that so we can assign someone the task, the information that you seek? Is that going to be something Jessica does, or Ms. Dangerfield maybe can do, or?
On the action, I
Well,
guess
you-
the action would be moving forward to get a study done. So, I mean, we'll
So
have to.
not a recommendation to the council that we go forward with a law, but just to do a study?
Do the study.
Okay, I got that.
And then that would give us the background to move in the direction of what parameters that we need to
So
go
we-
with the ordinance.
So we would be recommending to the council that we would like a study?
Yes.
And is that your understanding, Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Okay.
This is study to come up with a number of what the recommended percent should be. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
once they do the study,
Right.
if I'm not mistaken, Ms. Dangerfield, that
we're-
is the first step we have to do.
So we're not asking Mr. Parrington to prepare an ordinance based on these other ordinances that are in our packet per se, until we get that number and decide at the council level, because it's going to leave this committee, that we want to do it at all.
Right. And if I'm not mistaken, Ms. Dangerfield will agree with me on that process? That's what we need to do.
Yes, so the first thing you would want to do is see what the availability of firms are in your region, so that when you set a goal, it's attainable and that it's not aspirational.
That sounds entirely sane, because you wouldn't want to do something that couldn't possibly
That couldn't
happen.
be, right.
Right. Okay, so it's been moved again and seconded by Mr. Joseph and Mr. Turner respectively that, and I guess, Jessica, you have all the elements of that motion. I won't repeat those. Any further discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, that motion carries. Our next item and final item of the afternoon is item number 7. I have many speaker cards. Before we do that, a little bit of housekeeping and history so that everyone out there that's taking score can understand what's happening here. This all came about when the Homeroom Charter Revision Committee met, and as part of their responsibilities, they were charged to look at the entire Homeroom Charter and identify areas that they thought need changing. Our Homeroom Charter, of course, is, I guess, about 25 years old, if I'm not misspeaking there, and has never been changed other than one single time, which requires, of course, a vote at the polls. In this particular instance, it had to do with Section 418 of the HRC, and that's the section that deals with the parish governing authority, and I'll just read you what it says, shall make and adopt and shall be authorized to amend, extend, and add an official plan for the physical development of unincorporated areas of the parish. And the current language reads shall, and the HRC Revision Committee wanted to change that to may, shall to may, create by ordinance or a planning commission with the powers and duties set forth in state law, and shall appropriate funds for the commission as deems necessary and fiscally prudent. Additional language they recommended would be, should the governing authority create such a planning commission, all, and I'd like to emphasize and underline that word, actions by the commission shall be the advisory in nature, recommendations to the governing authority that shall, by vote of at least a majority of the governing authority, accept or reject the recommendations by the planning commission. Now, last time I spoke against not wanting to do this, I supported it and still do, but I did speak against the idea of all actions because on my Facebook site where there's oftentimes very vigorous discussion. Our former Planning and Development Director, Ricky Compton, reminded us all that we don't want to become and replace everything that the Planning Commission does. For example, simple family petitions. They may approve a cell phone tower for a utilities company, et cetera. So I don't think that was the intention of the HRC when they used the word all actions. So I support something different than that, and I won't read you what the change would be. Of course, it'd be all up to legal counsel to draft it, but basically making all actions, taking that away and eliminating anything other than major and minor subdivisions. We wouldn't require, that coming as a recommendation. Their decision and power would be final. We have several speakers tonight on this issue, and I guess we should go ahead and handle them first, and then we'll open it up for discussion. And our first speaker this evening will be Kimberly Christie. Ms. Christie, if you'd come up.
Good evening. My name is Kim Christie, and I live in Prairieville. Which of you can say that you are proud that the Planning Commission broke the law by approving a major subdivision on a road that is less than 18 feet wide? Which of you can say you are proud of the bait and switch tactic a fellow council member employed on a community surrounding the Oak Grove townhomes? Which of you can say that you are proud that the Planning Commission is a rubber stamp for every major and minor development that is brought to the Commission? If their actions are justified, what difference does it make who gives the final approval? If their actions are not justified, then it is the responsibility of the Parish Council to take control of this process and bring balance and fairness for all parties involved. This committee should pass this item to the full council. Otherwise, the only interpretation one can render is your no vote endorses the actions of the Planning Commission. We are the ones affected every day. The substandard roads and traffic cost us every day. They cause damage to our vehicles and decrease our fuel efficiency. We are afraid that our 16-year-olds will end up in a ditch while driving on roads with no shoulders. We get nervous about flooding when we get 6 inches of rain. Our new neighbors are astonished that untreated sewer is going in our ditches. We should feel protected by our elected officials, yet we feel exploited because our elected officials refuse to listen to the citizens of Ascension Parish. While creating a master plan, CPEX has researched, analyzed, and documented. The citizens of Ascension Parish want infrastructure before growth. Putting the responsibility of major and minor subdivisions in the hands of the Parish Council is the solution to a real challenge. This is the key to meeting the challenge of our unbridled growth, where there is no supporting infrastructure in place to support such growth. The Parish Council would be on the front line, which requires a different level of responsiveness and a different sense of responsibility. This level of responsiveness and responsibility would require the council to implement the laws that are needed to get control of the unbridled growth. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Christie. Our next speaker this evening on item 7 is Teresa Robert.
Good evening. I appreciate the opportunity. Don't have a prepared statement tonight, but I am here to say that I expect my councilmen to make these kind of decisions. That's why we vote for them. And we all know that the parish planning and zoning commissioners are named by your council, and certainly you're responsible for the decisions they make or don't make that are correctly, as the previous speaker said. But what I'd like to add into paper, and again, we do support that. We elect you. We want to hold you accountable for the decisions made. Right now, when there's a problem made and we call a councilman, they say, well, that's the Planning and Zoning Commission. That's a bunch of malarkey. I'd like to go ahead and put in the record, though, right now, our Planning and Zoning Commission, as you know, is developing and updating a new master plan. And as Ms. Kimball said, we have horrible infrastructure. It's not adequate for our parish. We are just locked in with horrible roads, substandard roads, dangerous roads all over this parish. We've gone and participated in hearings twice, and it was resounding that the people are opposed to increasing densities. We were given 4 scenarios. In every one of these scenarios, there are new densities. They are tripling. Every one of the plans are tripling the density that is allowed today. Today we have conservation, 1 house per acre, rural, 2 houses per acre, medium density, 3 houses. This is 4.5, 7.5, and 9.6 plus retail, along with the other ones. Citizens need to know that. And again, we're here tonight to ask you to represent us, and the way for you to represent us is to make the decisions as these things move forward. I'm going to put this in the record. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Robert. Our third speaker this evening on item 7 is Ms. Denise Drago.
Good evening. My name is Denise Drago, and I live off of Highway 73 in Prairieville, Louisiana. I'm here tonight to ask you to consider that all new construction in the parish be approved by the full council instead of the Planning and Zoning Commission. First, the Planning and Zoning Commission is not accountable to anyone. They vote how they please without listening at all to the people of Ascension Parish. An example of this was the building of Crawfish Aquatics on Highway 73 in Longwood. I collected and presented almost 600 hard copy signatures of Ascension residents to the Planning and Zoning Commissioners. There were almost 20 public speakers against this development, concerned with traffic and public safety on Highway 73. The Planning and Zoning Commission did not address these issues the residents talked about. Instead, they were only concerned about placement of a trash dumpster. Go back and watch the thing if you don't believe me, the video of it. They never addressed traffic at all, even after those hard-working residents came to voice their opinions and concerns. Again, they did not listen to the residents. They are not accountable to anyone, and they are not voted in, but rather appointed. Our chairman of the Planning and Zoning believes that they don't have discretionary authority despite the Attorney General's opinion to the contrary. The chairman has stated that everyone has the right to do whatever, to sell or do whatever they want with their land, even if the roads are overburdened and the health and welfare of the people are in jeopardy. As long as all codes are met, then it is approved. Based on their record, I believe the Planning and Zoning Commission is stacked in favor of development and business and against the residents of Ascension Parish. I am more comfortable talking with my councilman who does listen and represent residents who elected him to protect the health and safety of all. I do request you put my statements in the minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Drago. Our next speaker is Joel Robert.
Good evening. How y'all doing?
Fine.
The definition of a scapegoat, a person that is blamed for the wrongdoings, mistakes, and faults of others. The Planning Commission, they're the first and the last to vote on any new development, especially speaking of residential development in this parish, unless the developer wants to appeal a denial. So if the developer's not happy with it, they can appeal it. Number one, the Planning Commission is not elected. They are appointed by the council. This is the epitome of a scapegoat. Ascension is grossly overdeveloped. Roads, we have subpar roads. We don't have enough roads. We don't have connector roads. Inadequate drainage. The drainage that we do have is not operating at full capacity or even close to it. We're underinvested by the community and by the developers taking over the community. They come in, the developers take, they don't give to the community. Here recently, we have implemented some impact fees, and that's a good start, but it's still not near enough. The people of our parish have voiced a strong opinion that we want smart growth. We need infrastructure. New developments are being approved by the commission. Still, after this has been displayed by the public many times. Some of them criminal. Examples, Riverton, Jamestown Crossing, Brookstone. All developments made while not following parish ordinances. Permitted on promises, other developments. Promises that we cannot, as a parish, hold these developers accountable for. This is a major issue. As a council, it's your job to represent your people. The people have spoken. We don't want a committee that is appointed by you making decisions for you. This is clearly a system that promotes it promotes dishonesty, and it's basically just using your commission instead of as a tool, which the commission could be used as a tool, and it could be a great tool. They can go through and they can go through the due diligence and do all of the work for you. Give their recommendation, but you have got to vote on it because you represent us. You vote on it. Anybody that does not want to vote on it, the only reason I can see why is because they don't want the people to know that they support the developers and that they're in their pockets. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Robert. Our next speaker this evening will be Mr. Jeff Pettit.
Good evening. The two biggest challenges facing our parish, and it's our parish, are drainage and traffic. Our parish council votes on all drainage matters through the drainage board. They take care of drainage. When it comes to traffic, which is caused by new development, they don't vote on it. That vote rests with 7 appointed members of the Planning Commission. The problem with the Planning Commission is one word: contingencies. And let me give you an example. I'll give you several examples. Jamestown Crossing on Highway 930. A commissioner made a motion for approval with the contingency that the developer adds a little asphalt to the road. Highway 930 is a state highway. That is not within the authority of the Planning Commission to direct that. That rightfully should have gone back. That should have been withdrawn and pulled and sent back to the Transportation Committee of the Parish Council and let them coordinate that action with the state, if it's even allowed. But according to our parish engineer, that road is pebbling and not worthy of patching. In fact, this council has been working on for 10 years to replace that road. So what gives this Planning Commission the approval to tell a developer to do that? They're taking your authority away and your responsibility, and you're letting them do it. Let's talk about Riverton. It was approved with no traffic study. What was approved that night is what was not submitted. What was submitted was for the full development, and the traffic study was for the full development. Our parish traffic engineer at the time, who is no longer with us, said he could not recommend approval. It would take tens of millions of dollars to make traffic improvements to handle the load that that subdivision, that development, would put on that area of our parish. What did this planning commission let them do? They let them change the plat submission standing right here at this podium with no traffic study submitted for the change. None. They let them change it at the podium and approve it. The illegal acts, the taking of authority that's not theirs, all of this needs to stop. You're hurting every citizen of this parish, new and old. You're doing a disservice that will take decades to recover from. I'd ask you to do one of two things. Take the authority away from them or abolish the commission, as other political subdivisions have done in this state.
Thank you, Mr. Pettit. Our next speaker is Charlie Stevens.
I believe I can state tonight with a high level of confidence that our council is very talented, knowledgeable, and have long years of experiences on the job. And when you ran for office, the majority of the people voted for you, simply saying that they wanted you to execute this government, to operate this government. They had that confidence. Now, I know when you talk about government and the many, many things that must be done at a certain time to make this government effective, it simply means you will have to reach out, get boards, committee, and others to help you transact the business of this government in order for this government to meet the governmental needs of the people. But think about this. The people made their choice. They decided that they wanted you to make the final decision, to overlook this government. Think about this. They gonna hold you responsible for what happens or what failed to happen in this government. Again, I understand that the appointing of these boards are people to help you. But they have to really keep in the back of their mind that they were not the one given permission to run this government. You have that authority and should have that authority, rightfully so. The voters have made their choice. Now, if things don't go right, who do you go to? They're going to look to you because they're holding you responsible for what happens or what failed to happen. And as I close, I want to say to the general public, you know you need to stay involved. You know there's an old saying, if you tell me, I'll forget. If you show me, I'll remember. But if you let me be involved, I will understand.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. Our last speaker this evening will be Ms. Catherine Guppold.
Thank you, Catherine Guppold. The Ascension Republican Parish Executive Committee, or RPEC, favors the change being considered for approvals or final decisions of major and minor subdivisions to be made by the Parish Council. with recommendations from the Planning Commission. 3 questions. Shall the parish governing authority or council be more directly involved in decisions related to major and minor subdivisions? Yes. Ascension's infrastructure deficit is overwhelming, and the parish council must find the revenue in order to fix the problems created by unbridled growth. 2, can we bring more accountability into the approval process? Yes. Lack of accountability breeds corruption. Those elected to represent the people should be making these most important decisions. 3, should the people be given an opportunity to change the charter to allow more decisions to be made by their elected officials rather than unaccountable appointed members of the Planning Commission? Yes. Place this item on the ballot, which was part of the recent Home Rule Charter Committee recommendations, and we believe the people will support it. Why consider these changes? The Planning Commission has a consistent record of disregard for the principles of the master plan, using contingencies to create loopholes in our current development code and an unwillingness to work towards better practices, knowing the traffic impact study was inadequate and doing nothing to improve it, and a willingness to provide opportunities for developers over the health, safety, and welfare of the people. Sit silent or vote no if you are not committed to the health, safety, and welfare of the people. Sit silent and vote no if you want to continue to play the blame game. Oh, the commission made that decision, not the council, and shirk your responsibility. Sit silent and vote no if you are unwilling to improve accountability to the public for development decisions. Any councilman not committed to increased accountability, responsibility, and commitment to the people does not deserve to ask for the people's vote in next year's election. Councilman Dawson, stop crawfishing and making excuses why it can't be done, or let the fear of lawsuits control your decision. You supported this when you voted on the Charter Commission. As my councilman, I expect you to support this item tonight and move this item to the full council. The challenges local government faces are irresponsible growth are extremely burdensome. Do not turn a deaf ear to the people. Vote yes to this proposed change to the charter and pass it out of committee. Your political survival and our community's future depend on it. Please place these in the record.
Thank you, Mrs. Gupple. We have additional people who are in support and have filled out a green card for item number 7. I'll just read them into the record. They have checked off the box choosing I am present in support, but I do not wish to speak. That would be Ms. Karen Gaspard Gonzalez, Mr. Andrew Romero, also of Gonzalez, Miss Cindy Quick, maybe, Gonzalez, Linda, I have a little trouble with the handwriting here, maybe Gandon. Did I get that correct, ma'am? If not, I apologize. Gonzalez, Jeannie Robert Gonzalez, and Lou Guppelt Gonzalez, Kathy Edmondson of Gonzalez. What? Gonzalez is represented. And Tim Riley of Gonzalez. Did I miss anyone? Okay. I want to review the what the speaker said and then turn it over to the committee and let them try to address the concerns we heard here tonight and whatever else comes of that discussion. One speaker said that they feared that the CPEX master plan that we have ongoing is going to make a problem we have right now exacerbated even further because of some of their recommendations that already appear to be surfacing to the top of more density when you consider lots and lot sizes. We heard about Crawfish Aquatics and the fact that 600 signatures were gathered against that development, and the speaker didn't mention it, but I wouldn't hasten to add that is in my district. There's a hospital going on approved right there by the commission as well. There's most recently the approval of 200 home sites in the first filing of Halls of Dutchtown. There's a church, church, is it a church? No, it's another school I'm trying to get at, and we already have one right down from there on Highway 73, St. John's, as well as 2 when you cross the interstate and go into Miss Casso's district from mine. Dutchtown Middle and Dutchtown High. Another speaker talked about, he felt strongly that the PC was actually being used as a scapegoat, and that this council is hiding behind their skirts in advocating the decision-making process to those guys, so that we could tell our voters, hey, I didn't do it, this person who was appointed did it. Another speaker pointed out that that they were really concerned about permissions and permits being given on promises by the Planning Commission, which I guess is a synonym for the argument of contingencies. It is one of my pet peeves. I have seen anywhere from 1, 2, or 3 contingencies to any approval of a major or minor subdivision routinely, and I have seen at least one subdivision in which there was, I hope I'm not misspeaking, but about a baker's dozen. For those who don't know, that's 13 contingencies. I'm very concerned, and I've had discussions of legal about this, and I think I can tell you this, I might have some support there, so even if I didn't, I'm going to bring that back to this committee for further discussion beyond what we're talking about tonight. Our law does say that they're supposed to give an up or down vote, approval or denial. It really doesn't talk about contingencies, but there is, whether that's, quote, legalese for inartfully crafted, you know, do we need another sentence that says that means no contingencies? I know our former director, Ricky Compton, planning director, also believed that it should be an up-down vote. And quite frankly, I think it's incredible, because all these problems arise at the meeting, they do the vetting, and it ain't the proposal that actually gets approved. It's a proposal with all these promises, as the speaker said, or contingencies. Another person talked about drainage and traffic being the big two. I would concur with that. When I joined this council almost 8 years ago, 7 years ago to be exact, just about, we were asked at a meeting up in D.C. about, you know, what is the two major things facing this parish. And of course, it was roads and sewer back then, but since the great storm of 2016 in August, I would say that drainage is in the top two now. The comment of the speaker was that Drainage Council does vote on everything. We have an East Ascension gravity drainage district. Of course, on traffic, that's not the case. The Planning Commission has the final road. The speaker also gave some examples. For example, the widening of 930 and, you know, that being the state's responsibility and not Ascension Parish's, et cetera. Another speaker mentioned that the majority of people voted for us to take this responsibility and to make decisions. And therefore, the voters, if we were to go in that route, could hold us directly responsible, and we could continue to use the Planning Commission as our helpers to doing the major part of the vetting. And I know that's an issue, and it's in our packets, and I'm sure we'll be talking about it shortly. Mr. Dawson asked for more information that Mr. Fournier has generated. So, gentlemen, it's in your package this evening, talking about how many cases we've had for the last several years. My personal opinion and interpretation right now of that data, others may feel otherwise, is it wouldn't be much more of a burden than it currently is. After all, most of these subdivisions that aren't, quote, if I could borrow this word in quotes, grotesque violators of our codes, we would just be rubber stamping it. It would probably be the ones of more of contention, of which were named singly tonight by multiple speakers, widths of road problems, putting money aside with the contingency that we're going to remove a weir on a geographically differently located property than the caption property, et cetera, where I certainly would like a bite of the apple myself. Last speaker, I believe, talked about the council should also have the authority, more or less, the speaker right before that, to make these decisions. Last time I said for want of a better place, I would start over with Mr. Dawson, but to be fair now, this time I will go to my left, to your immediate right, and we'll start with Mr. Turner.
I don't have any comment on it.
You pass?
Pass.
Mr. Joseph.
Well, Doc, I'm really sitting here. Mr. O'Neill is out there, and I just like to listen to.
Well, I researched this today, and if you have a planning commission, it's their responsibility to approve or disapprove subdivisions. You cannot take it away from them. That's their responsibility. In accordance with Article 6 of Section 6 of the Constitution in 1333, even a home rule charter community it's not bound by the state provisions for membership, appointment, organization, and structure of planning commission, but the override by a council is it deals with the power. And the power cannot be inconsistent with state law, which require a 2/3 vote of the entire council. So you can't make them a recommending body. By state law, planning commissions have the function to approve or disapprove subdivisions. So you can do away with the planning commission, and then you'd be the planning commission. But you cannot make them a recommending body to you. If they approve it, then, you know, if you have a planning commission, you're gonna have a planning commission. If you don't have a planning commission, you don't have one.
Okay. O'Neill, I don't know if you was here. I don't know. I might be wrong. And in 2008, before we got rid of the previous planning commission, did we change anything in that ordinance? 'Cause when we did it,
We changed the size.
Okay, that's what we
did
did.
change the size.
Okay, if we go to, we make the final decision.
You can't do it. You gotta do away with it if you wanna do that.
I'm using this as a scenario, okay? Okay? We deny somebody as a council. If we do away with them, we deny somebody. And they appeal it.
There'd be no appeal. It'd be the court. You can't appeal your own decisions to yourself. You'd have to do away with the Board of Appeals. You would have no appeals. You go directly to court.
Okay. So the other option I'm looking at, if we change some of the language in our ordinance, would,
In what method?
like Doc said, getting rid of one word, concessions. That's just the word, right, Doc?
Well, you can amend the ordinances yourself. I mean, you can amend your subdivision development code yourself. But you can't make the planning commission an advisory board to yourself. By state law, they approve or disapprove subdivision plats.
Okay, that's all I have right now, Doc.
Thank you. I think one thing that Mr. Parrington and I would agree on, and we spend a lot of time on the phone about this during the week, and he sent us an email which the public's not privy to, and I'm going to at least quote an excerpt or two from that and making the comments I'm going to make. And then we spent a good bit of time further on the topic in any chambers right before this meeting, and I learned that our opinions differed even further, but I'll just suggest this anyway. I'm not an attorney. I don't plan to ever become one or have any desire to be one, but I am a lawmaker, and that's one of the issues I think I'm having with all this, is that it seems like I can make some laws, other laws I cannot, because the state's done this, or the federal government's going to trump this on the state level and so forth. But that notwithstanding, in his email to this committee this morning, I guess it was around 9:30 this morning, gentlemen, I have asked been asked to attend tonight's Strategic Planning Commission meeting regarding the thought of making Planning Commission decisions advisory as are zoning commission actions. That's absolutely true, and that request came from Mr. Dawson, which he called me and said, "Would that be okay, Doc?" And I said, "Well, sure. I personally would like to see Mr. Parrington here all the time at all our meetings. I'd like to see him at recreation. I'd like to see him at transportation, utilities, you name it, so that we don't waste a lot of time and at least hear what his opinions are and so forth before bringing any of our, that's what we are, kind of like the zoning commission. We make recommendations. We don't make law. I just told that to the previous speaker. We're just going to recommend either we do a DBE thing or not, the disadvantaged business enterprise, if you recall. And just like this, we're gonna either recommend this or we're not, and then the full body's gonna deliberate and decide, but certainly we can't do anything that's against the law. So again, what is and what isn't against the law? Mr. Perrington wrote further, the attached AG, it stands for Attorney General's, opinion provides that even homeroom charter communities, that's like us, we have a homeroom charter in Century Parish, cannot infringe on the powers. And I want to dwell upon the idea of infringement on powers. They put the word powers in quote, because that's what they have right now, because we gave them all the power. The question is, can we revoke a portion of said power without going all the way and revoking all of the power and becoming a planning commission, which I'm not overly interested in doing. I was one once, and I'd like to see them continue vetting. I'd just like the ability of all the speakers tonight to be directly answerable to my voters. On the powers granted to the planning commissions to approve or disapprove subdivisions, and this is an interesting part of the sentence, unless done so by two-thirds vote of the entire membership of the governing authority as provided by LA Revised Statute 33109. Well, that right there tells me, again, I'm not an attorney, unless done so by two-thirds vote, that just says that we can overturn it. Now, the problem there becomes, is a new problem arises, is that, you know, we have this 60-day state law that if you don't do something in 60 days, it's automatically approved. And we argued last time, and I think that's what Mr. Dawson wanted to see, and it's in our packets. I've already given you my interpretation of it. How many cases, and would we get into issues of if they approve something and we wanted to deny it, can we get it done within the 60 days, or vice versa? If they didn't approve, they disapproved, and we wanted to approve it. And I believe the answer is yes, because they meet on the Wednesday before, we meet on a Thursday, so forth and so on. But it does get to the two-thirds vote issue. What I talked to Mr. Perrington about in Annie Chambers before the meeting is as follows. Well, and this happens fairly frequently, not all the time. If you have all 11 members there, it wouldn't be a problem. We could add just a sentence or two, Mr. Perrington said, that would say, okay, we're still going to have a commission, but we're going to have a sentence in there that says that we can override this by a two-thirds vote. We could add that sentence, he said. All right, but what happens if there's 10 guys there? You're still okay, because two-thirds of the 11, the full membership, is 8. You could still do it if there's 9. You could do it if there's even 8 and all 8 so vote. But the second you have 7 and the clock's still ticking, I do agree that would be a problem. So I would concede that is an issue. But we're still not there, because we still haven't decided, is Mr. Perrington correct or not about the interpretation of once you give the power, it means all powers, and you can't select one power out and, let's say, leave family petitions with their final discretion and leave not being a recommendation, and cell towers and all the other kind of things that aren't major and minor subdivisions. When he says infringe upon the powers, I believe that if we went to a recommendation, we would not be infringing on the power that the PC has, because if we relegate their decision-making to either an approval or denial recommendation, they no longer have the power. We have the power. Now, he's going to tell you in a minute that's not so and give his reasons, so I'll just ask you on the whole water. I would point out, the reason I feel this way is in Section 103, Planning Commission Membership and Appointment, which reads as follows. Where a parish or municipality, where a parish, skip the municipality part, has adopted a charter we have for local self-government or other homeroom charter for such a charter provides for the establishment of a planning commission we have, or otherwise provides for the functions of planning commission to be performed by the governing authority or other board of commission. And here's the part I'd like to put in bold. The provisions of this subpart concerning membership, appointment, organization, structure shall not be applicable. So if we just decided we wanted to do it, you know, that would be kind of moot anyway. But here it says, in such case, any parish or municipality with a homeroom charter may avail itself the power and authority granted herein to a planning commission. And I believe that's what he's talking about. We could become the planning commission, but I believe that also says it allows any, under the word all, powers of the PC to be taken in-house by the council. For example, a recommendation to approve or deny major or minor subdivisions by the planning commission. If we did that, it would remove the final power of them to approve and give it to the council. since we would then have this quote power, we are not infringing and not overturning a power granted decision-making of our planning commission. We would instead be just making the final decision after considering the planning commission's recommendation. Again, I'm no attorney. O'Neill tells me I'm absolutely wrong, and that we can't do this shy of one or two options, and if I'll try, O'Neill. One would be abolition of the entire commission and bringing it totally in-house, which I doubt would ever float with this commission, and I gotta admit, I would have my druthers with that either. Ladies and gentlemen, I love y'all to death, but I'm a busy, busy guy as it is. Or number two, which I'd at least like to see discussed further here tonight, is this caveat that he wrote, and it's in the law, it's in RS 33-109, it's in two Attorney General opinions that Mr. Parrington supplied, and that is, powers granted by the Planning Commission to approve or disapprove unless done so by 2/3 vote of the entire membership of the governing authority. Certainly would like to see it. One step in the correct direction would be to add that sentence. So when there is I'm going to put the word in quotes again, a grotesque decision made based on where a code has been violated, and they approve it anyway, we would have a chance to have a second bite at the apple. And as always, I thank everyone for listening. Mr. Dawson.
So I'm not clear about the 2/3 myself. What were you proposing, Doc? That we would do that as an appeal board, or we would do that as?
It's already in the law. Mr. Parrington, you actually spoke about it a moment ago.
Would
you elaborate?
We would
You
do
would do
that
it as an appeal board. It would
Do
have
that
to be
as the appeal board.
Right.
And so, I mean, one thing that I learned is that we have to change our procedure.
But that's an appeal. Be mindful now, Bill and O'Neill. That's an appeal of a denial, which is what a developer's going to do. Suppose the public wants to appeal an approval.
It has to be a person of interest. The public is, now, in Baton Rouge, a council member can appeal. A person who does not have an interest can't appeal something. Anybody can't just jump in and appeal something they don't like.
Well, can a council person in Ascension appeal?
I would think if you could provide that in your ordinance, that he could appeal.
East Baton Rouge does that, do they not?
Yes, that's how East Baton Rouge handles it. So Joe Blow off the street can't appeal the decision. He has no interest in it. He doesn't have.
So even though we're obligated to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the people, they have no interest in being safe and having good welfare, and
You're dealing with someone's property rights. That's what.
as their representative, I could appeal it.
Yeah.
That you could provide that.
Under our current law, we can't do that.
You'd have to amend your law to provide for that.
We amend an ordinance. That
Right.
wouldn't require a charter.
No, that would not.
Well, let me, I am a little bit confused, but, what I'm understanding, O'Neill, is that your opinion is that we can't take half the bite of the apple. We have to abolish the planning and zoning, or planning commission, not planning and zoning, planning commission, in order for us to, rule on plats and subdivisions. Is that correct?
Or you can make yourself or as an appeal, you can authorize an appeal to be override their decisions by 2/3 vote.
Before going into that level, apologize, Bill, ma'am, I know you're not probably finished, but I'll give you all the time you want. Is there a chance and with all due respect, O'Neill, I really appreciate you working with me. You put in a lot of hours, people are not aware of it, I want that in the record. That we could get an Attorney General's opinion, that we could move out a little piece of their authority to look at just the idea of major and minor subdivisions, leaving all other authorities that we've given to them in terms of the quote power found in, what was it, 1039 or whatever the law was that you cited to me?
If the council does that.
33:109.
That's a council decision. The problem I see with
Well, I
that,
can't
though,
do it, because in the past, when I've tried to get an Attorney General's opinion, they tell me I'm part of a body and I need a
Well, I
majority
move
of
that
them.
we ask for Attorney General's opinion to clarify this.
Motion or
And
second?
we move that forward to the council.
Second.
Wow.
Wait.
Okay, it's been moved
I
by,
mean, that's what I was thinking myself.
I think that's totally sane, and I thank my colleagues. Mr. Dawson has moved, and Mr. Turner has seconded that we seek Attorney General's opinion on whether or not it is legal for a local governing authority to be sure we get the motion here correct, to have a planning commission, have them continue to operate as a planning commission on all decisions save major and minor subdivisions.
So we send that to the council.
And
No,
as a recommendation to the, is it a recommendation, or are we saying as a body? Now, we're a body, so my understanding is we can, as a body,
I think the AG requires the council to vote on it.
Was that send it to the council?
so we cannot as a body with the majority of this, like if all of us say we want to do this, we cannot do it. We have to
Well,
have
no.
6 members.
No, Doc, if all of us agree with it, it goes on a consent agenda.
Right, and somebody could pull it out and say, no, we don't get the
Well, yeah, well,
opinion.
that's the risk you got.
Well, I'm just asking, is that correct? We're a body that's within a body, so,
You're not really a body, you're a committee of a body. I think they require you to have your action by the council to take something from the AG's.
Well, I mean, let's be safe, send it to the council.
well, it's better than nothing. I mean, I don't know what else to do here, and plus, I don't have the parliamentary power to stop this at this point, because it's been motioned and second, and my next job is to
I mean, it's only
ask,
a
is there
week.
any discussion?
There's only a week difference between this meeting and the council meeting.
I understand that part. I mean, I would like it, if we can get it rolling, you're assuming it's gonna be approved too. Then there's only a
Well,
week
it's gonna
difference.
go to the council. I mean, that's
Okay,
what he's
okay.
telling us we have to
It has
have.
been motioned and second by Councilman Dawson and Turner respectively that we recommend to the full council to get an Attorney General's opinion on whether or not this body would be allowed to maintain a planning commission who would make all decisions. That would be the power we're giving them. And we would alter the home rule charter to say only major and minor subdivisions would require the council to sign off on it. Is that the
No,
motion?
I don't think that's what I thought was that whether you could separate those powers so that you serve.
That's essentially what I just said.
Because you gotta comply with.
Well,
the
you'll be
law.
writing the request, I'm sure, so
Right.
we can work on that together.
Right. That
And
would
I'm sure we'll be able to
that
agree
you
on
would
it.
have the right to separate major and minor subdivisions from, you wouldn't have to do away with the board completely. You still would only be an appeal board to an approval,
Right.
just like you would a denial.
Right. Well, we wouldn't be an appeal board anymore on that one decision on minor, it would stop there, and then the next step would be a judiciary filing on the part of the developer if he didn't like it.
No, the law says now that major and minor subdivisions must go to a planning commission. I thought that what Councilman Dawson said was that, could you separate it, and then the issue of, where you didn't have to hear everything except major and minors would come, you would eliminate, they would still act, because I think that's what state law says.
Right, yeah, they would still say, instead of,
And it wouldn't be a- and you
there
could
actually would be
override
a
it by
recommendation
2/3
to us,
vote.
and then can we vote on it?
Right, can you override it by
That's
two-thirds
what the
vote?
motion
That's
is.
what yeah,
All right?
I'm good.
that's what I thought it was.
Travis, you good?
Okay.
Everybody's
Yes.
good. Any further discussion? Any objection? Hearing none? The motion passes. I'd like to thank everybody for coming this afternoon.
Move to adjourn.
Move to adjourn by
Second.
Councilman Dawson, second by Mr. Joseph. We are adjourned.